Hello and welcome to Speaking of Data, presented by TDWI, the premier data, AI, and analytics podcast. I'm your co-host, Andrew Miller, and on today's episode, we'll hear from Lyndsay Wise on enabling data intelligence and observability. We hope you enjoy this episode, and for more cutting-edge information on data, AI, and analytics, please visit tdwi.org. And with that, let's get started. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us again here on Speaking of Data. I'm very excited to welcome Lyndsay Wise on the podcast today with Meighan and myself to discuss enabling data intelligence and its observability. Lyndsay is the data governance lead and chief data steward at the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons in Canada. She's also going to be joining us for our virtual summit in April on this topic as well. I'm excited to talk to you about this topic here, Lyndsay, today. But before we jump into the questions, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, we couldn't be happier to have you on. And again, enabling data intelligence and observability seems like it might be, maybe too much for a single podcast, but we're going to do our best to touch on the key topics here. And I think a great place for us to start is maybe with some definitions. So, Lyndsay, if you don't mind, can you define data intelligence and data observability in practical terms? And then maybe also like why these concepts are becoming so critical for data-driven organizations?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really good place to start. I feel like sometimes there are so many people with different semantics talking about data intelligence and data observability, but not really breaking it down. I actually saw, and I'm not going to take credit for this, but I saw a great definition that data intelligence is almost like that context layer of the what and who of understanding data. So understanding data quality and data governance and data lineage and all of those things. Whereas data observability is like the how and the when, the health layer of, is everything working properly? Are the pipelines in check? Do we understand across your data lifecycle? Is everything running smoothly? And the two of them really do go hand in hand, especially today when organizations are really I don't mean struggling, but they're really aspiring to be data driven and continue and become more data driven as organizations want to adopt AI more broadly across the organization. So that's the way that I've defined it, even though it can be a little bit broader in some cases, but I think that's a decent definition in terms of understanding things on a business level as well.
Yeah, I think that those are great definitions, and thanks for outlining that so clearly. Do you have, you mentioned AI as part of why this is becoming so important. Um, what are you seeing there? And I guess what are your comments on why is this so critical now?
So that's a really good question. And I'm almost going to break it out as the way I see AI in two different ways. So, a lot of times for data intelligence and data observability, organizations are leveraging machine learning and AI models to ingest data automatically and create relationships to identify data lineage. But on the other side, we also want to enable organizations to leverage data observability and data intelligence to be able to use AI more broadly. So organizations want to be able to look at more models of whether it's Gen AI or using AI for broader analytics, but they can't do that if their data isn't healthy. They can't do that if they don't have strong data governance and data quality, data tagging, identifying sensitivity labels to make sure that no sensitive information that would risk compliance or security risks. So all of these things are really important and go into AI. So if you don't have strong observability and data intelligence, enabling AI is going to be very challenging. And we see that a lot. Not that I have any stats offhand, but you'll see stats all the time of organizations rushing to integrate or implement different AI projects, and yet they're failing. And they have to go back, and it's time, money, and all of these efforts.
Yeah, we see that a lot in our data. TDWI does a lot of research here. And we just got some fresh research for 2026 and we asked about organizational priorities. And Gen AI, of course, is way up there and accelerating, their efforts around Gen AI. But what also is on the list is improving their large scale data architectures. And I think that's directly correlated to the drive to accelerate AI. And foundational to that, those data architectures are data quality and being able to trust the data. I think that's why the data intelligence and data observability conversation is so important, because it really helps helps organizations be able to trust their data more. And I think that's a good segue into the next question we have for you. And, and that's what happens when companies ignore data intelligence and data observability. What are the biggest risks organizations face if they lack this in their data ecosystem?
Yeah, I think there are so many risks, and I think one of the things that ends up happening is, to your point and what you're seeing in your research, is that organizations are so excited to take advantage of the next trends and look at AI and AI adoption, but without really that foundational layer, there are a lot of risks. And the problem is that it's a lot of effort to get data intelligence and data observability right. So even me with data governance, there are so many moving pieces, whether it's processes, people, systems, etc. So the risk is that if you don't focus on strong data observability and intelligence, you're not going to be able to implement AI successfully. Or if you do, you might not be getting the right answers. Additionally, by really understanding the health of your data ecosystem, what happens then is you can understand in an agile development environment, when there are all these moving pieces and constant changes to different systems and updates and new integrations, you can understand breakages proactively. You can make sure that if there's any changes, reports aren't going to break, or you're not going to suddenly have two different BI reports that are stating different things because the sources are from different systems and you don't know that changes have been made because there hasn't been that strong observability layer. Those are just some of the issues. Then, if you look at security and privacy, if you don't have those insights, there are financial risks to organizations. There are privacy risks if you're looking at healthcare or education or national defense, et cetera. All of these things, it's almost hard to hone in on what are the biggest risks because there could be so many if you don't invest in those strong layers that underlies all of the data that organizations are leveraging.
Yeah, and I guess it makes sense that, something we also are seeing, you see it in the news all the time. There's lots of pilots out there around AI, but when they try to move them into production, that's when the risk gets real. So the cost, I think organizations are comfortable. Okay, we're in a pilot, I'm going to be okay with the risk of the data quality or not having full visibility into things. But when they try to move it into production and scale it, that's when the risks and whether it be compliance or, bad information and how that impacts decisions or systems or agentic decisions, ultimately, like that's when the risk becomes real and when organizations really need to focus on getting it right at the foundational layer.
Yeah, that is so true. It kind of feels, as you're talking about it, it's that risk of that black box of you're building
Yeah.
something, but you really don't know what is going to come out on the other end.
Well, and I think I would like to talk about like the role of metadata management here in the grand scheme of things, and specifically with automation of metadata management. Can you explain a little bit about how that fits into what we're discussing here today?
Definitely. When I was thinking about the idea of automated metadata management versus just, an organization having to manually put the pieces together. The reality is with automation, you can leverage tools to scan data, create smart tagging, create lineage. And the importance of having it automated is that when things change, you don't have to automatically go and update a data catalog or update some sort of lineage document or a Visio diagram, etc. Everything is automatically updated and can scan more broadly. So if people are making changes in one system, but not necessarily communicating to, let's say, a data governance program, or if different systems are being added and it's still in UAT and it hasn't been put in production yet, but there are going to be implications, automatically being able to manage data and understand the information associated with data being added to a system or different upstream and downstream systems and connections with the lineage between systems and understanding the transformations automatically really helps you proactively view and scan your total data ecosystem, as opposed to piecing together pieces manually and then having to figure out, well, how do we structure this so that we can leverage AI or advanced analytics or understand what data needs to flow into different systems? Are there different syncs that are breaking? Sometimes organizations only know that after the fact, as opposed to being able to enable automated metadata management and then add alerting to it so that we understand if syncs break, or if there is, let's say, a tag that something new comes in is identified as sensitive or confidential. Well, then how should that be handled proactively instead of having a potential risk of a data breach, et cetera?
Yeah, I think this is such an important example of where automation can really help save time and enable people to focus their energy on things where they can create real value. Because, when we have done research around the data quality space and around data observability and data monitoring, with exactly the things you're talking about, Lyndsay, with having fragmented systems, and you have people on your data team, and we've done the research here, hundreds of hours are being spent on monitoring systems, fixing breaks, making sure everything's running. And these are things that can be automated. And so those people spending hundreds of hours can focus on creating real value outside of, just monitoring tasks on these fragmented data sources. And I think that leads perfectly into the topic of governance. How does governance evolve when you move towards, a more automated observable system? And how do you ensure the right people have the right access without compromising security or compliance?
Yeah, that's a big one with the second part of that question. I think for the first part, in terms of governance evolving, is it really enables the ability to focus on the important things. So being able to focus on making sure that data governance is supporting business needs and business units with their data needs, as opposed to running around like a headless chicken trying to put out fires, as an example. That, once you have all the systems in place, then you can really start to identify the value to the business, as opposed to just standing up a data asset catalog, looking at data lineage, all of these things, which are super important. But when it comes to the data stewards who might sit in 20 or 30 or 40 different business units, they don't always care because they don't always understand the value. So when you have everything automated and a really strong underlying framework and systems that support that are automated, you can start looking at the data literacy needs in your organization. You can start getting people involved in more advanced analytics and reporting and the things that were the daily, as you had mentioned before, Meighan, of monitoring data or running around and trying to fix things. When you can do that proactively, you can act as a data governance and IT working together to really kind of create that three-legged stool where you have business, IT, and data together, and it kind of makes you move on to those next levels. But at the same time, as you mentioned, that brings up the potential for security of who should have all of those usage rules, who should have access to what data. Are you giving the data stewards access to your data governance tools? Or is it only internal to more of an IT department to manage that with data governance as an overlying layer, but within more of the data team versus on the business side? How are you protecting data? How are you linking kind of the tagging and the sensitivity labels to who has access to those data? And a lot of times it's really making sure that you have that role-based access control and that it's implemented at a field level within different systems so that only the people who need to have access do have access. But then it also depends on doing that seamlessly, also depends on the systems that are implemented, which would differ within different organizations.
Well, and I think you've kind of teed us up for this last question here, Lyndsay, before we let you go. And it underscores the whole conversation, but specifically with AI initiatives, advanced analytics success, how does strong data observability directly impact that?
I almost think part of it goes back to what we had discussed before of failing AI projects or organizations struggling with trusting their data. Is that if you really have strong observability, which is a big investment, whether it's financially, time, resources, but you can really enable for organizations, which is pretty much every organization that now that wants to jump on the AI bandwagon, that if you have that strong layer, it enables broader success. You're more likely to succeed if you understand your data, if you've tagged your data, so that if you're using Gen AI as an example, whatever tool you're using knows what to search, knows how to categorize things, and can build off of that, as well as ensuring that you can look at more advanced types of analytics to apply because of the fact that you have your data management and your data infrastructure so well coordinated in the sense of understanding where all the pieces fit. How do different pieces of information, fields, where are they on different reports? What were the transformations? What is their source? Are they feeding to different systems? All of this is super important for analytics to really understand so that you can ensure that data is accurate, up to date, valuable, etc. And I think that with AI, it's the same, that we really need strong data foundations. Even though we all want to kind of jump on board and move ahead with AI, the tools are still evolving. So it's great that now we have automated metadata management and automated, you can create data asset catalogs and all of those things and have the smart tagging, but it doesn't mean that that's enough to really enable broader AI or advanced analytics unless you really have that underlying structure and also make sure that there's people oversight, that you have skilled employees and people who can really identify and have the skill sets to delve into those layers and can manage data observability and data intelligence more proactively to support broader AI initiatives, essentially. Because I don't think, unfortunately, I think that the rate of failure will continue until organizations really start with those base initiatives first, even though it's kind of more time intensive and a struggle because you don't necessarily see that business side value. But it's so important in order to get there that you really need to invest the time into developing strong data observability.
Have you seen any AI tools that can help with these observability lineage in those the foundational pieces like you're saying? So if folks that are interested in starting out, can they bring AI in to help with that piece?
I think so. And I've always kind of felt in previous roles and whatever that I always hate to suggest the solution of, oh, you should use this, because it really depends on what your organization is. Are they a Microsoft shop? Are they Oracle? Are they, using a startup solution? Do they prefer like a Databricks or a Snowflake type? Are there different, like, are they leveraging 20 or 30 disparate cloud-based offerings? All of that is really going to change what they're looking for in terms of requirements. But I definitely think we're far enough along because a lot of these solutions can scan your systems automatically and at least recommend, if it's like an 80-20 rule where they can create 80% of the data lineage, and then you just go and match and fix the missing pieces and add different tags or identify rules. In some cases, you can add documentation and policies which are attached to different data ownership rules, etc. So there are definitely a lot of tools out there. It's just finding the right one for the needs. It really depends on the situation.
I think that's a great answer, Lyndsay. And I do think, I mean, I think this is an area where solutions really are exploding because of the demand. So there is a lot to choose from. And one thing in your answer, your previous answer, I'm really glad that you pointed out that this isn't just about AI. It is also about helping companies move towards more advanced analytics or self-service analytics. Um, Observability and data intelligence is critical both to AI, but also to organizations that just want to become more data driven and democratize analytics more across the organization. So it is a critical foundation.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier on in the episode, Lyndsay will be joining us for our virtual summit coming up in April. It'll be taking place April 29th, and the virtual summit is on metadata strategies for AI, BI, and data intelligence. Lyndsay, again, will be discussing enabling data intelligence and observability. Lyndsay, do you mind giving us a quick preview of what folks can expect out of your session there?
Yeah, definitely. It will be a bit of really understanding, going more into depth on what is data intelligence and data observability, how they overlap, how not only the importance of automation, but also some of the steps in terms of checklists of what you should be looking at and the importance of automation, as well as data quality and really building a foundation of proactive data visibility. So a lot of it is hopefully you'll be able to take away what would work for your organization, because I'm still of the set that yes, there are key features that you always need no matter what, but the actual checklist items or how you go about getting there will differ. And so that's a lot of what I'll be focusing on.
Well, that was fantastic, Lyndsay. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been a great conversation, and I'll include a link in this description of this episode for more information for folks if they're interested. But Lyndsay, thank you again for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you. I look forward to your session here at the end of April, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lyndsay. It was wonderful talking with you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Speaking of Data, presented by TDWI. If you'd like to engage further with us, please check out our website at tdwi.org, and please don't forget to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review. Take care, and we'll see you soon. To subscribe to the Speaking of Data podcast, or to learn more about TDWI's research and training on all things data management and analytics, visit tdwi.org or click the link in the description below. Thanks for tuning in.